right from the beginning, separate your emotions from your decision making.
The amount of people that have come to me and go, Jason, just take my business. You don't even have to pay me for it.
The challenge is that as we go along, we never switch. That's my wife, that's my brother, that's my uncle. I can't get rid of them. And when we're now looking at the buyout of this next brother, we're looking at a multiple buyout for him compared to what his three brothers were able to achieve.
But why would you ever love something that doesn't love you back?
We just put an expansion on that business that will increase the capacity by 10 times.
Help me welcome to the stage, Miss Rena. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jason. I am so excited for this conversation because it feels like we've been trying to get this on the calendar for months. So I'm so excited to be here and to just have a little bit of a chat about getting your business ready for transition/sale.
Yeah, I love it. And you and I have had so many hours on the phone and working with each other, looking at different projects and whatnot. And I just, me and my team have come to adore you. And we have a lot of respect for the work that you do. So I'm also excited about the conversation. Tell us just give us a little background on where you came from, why you're doing the work that you're doing, and we'll get into the conversation.
Well, every good story is a journey of 10,000 steps, right? So I've got a crazy backstory, but the highlights of it all is that I was raised on a dairy farm, and my family has been in farming for really ever since we crossed the ocean and came from Germany and landed in the US and ended up in Iowa. So I got a long history of a farming background and was very, very privileged to be able to work, grow up alongside my father, his brothers, my grandmother, and all of my cousins to watch a very, very hustle bustle, go getter family, work alongside each other and all of the challenges that creates. And, when I went off to college, I thought I was going to escape family business forever. I had big aspirations to go in a completely different direction. And, they always say that you always end up right back home, which is exactly what happened. As I ended up right back in Iowa. I had an opportunity to come alongside a company with the consulting that I was doing. They were looking for, a lot of the things that I was doing. I ended up working with that company and ended up being a part of their succession plan. And so was able to acquire that company in 2019. And that allowed me then the freedom to really focus where that company was going to spend our time. And we locked in on agriculture as being a high need space. So we took all the work that we were doing with many, many other different industries. We focused it down on farms and agribusinesses, still do a lot of work in other types of industries, but have really niched in to serve agriculture. And so it was a long, winding road, but I ended up an hour and a half from my front door of the home I grew up in. So
That's amazing. I at the outset of the podcast, I said there's if in terms of gaining the trust of a particular industry, the farming industry is incredibly hard to have the trust of. Talk to us a little bit about, so put some context around that, why that's true, and how you became one of the trusted names in that space.
yeah, I think that agriculture is just still an industry that really values authenticity. They really value the truth. They value family. They value, people that can understand the situation that they are operating in. And I think, having been blessed with a backstory that includes ag, dairy in particular, it's a high intensity, high focus space to be in. I think that just allowed me to have a little bit of credibility in being able to say, yeah, I get where you're coming from. And of course, I really spent my entire career getting to know business people. And I was a banker for a while and served high net worth individuals, business owners. I was overseas and got to work with, multi-generational family businesses. And so just really being able to say, I can hear you, I understand you, I'm empathetic to you. I think that that is what really creates the beginning of relationships, right? The high speed of trust. And so by just being able to empathize, but also just be excited. Agriculture has got to be one of the coolest industries that is in high speed. Um, it's just adjusting at the speed of light right now. So it's a very dynamic, exciting industry to be in. And all of that, I think, makes for a lot of really cool relationships when you get to know the people that are at the helm of those decisions.
Yeah, it's so aligned with what I have found, when we've worked in ag, and I've owned a couple of different companies that were agriculture based, and it's like the state of Missouri, right? The show me state. And
Yes.
that's how it is. You're dealing with people that have their 4, 5, 6 generations deep in working with the land and working with animals. And so this, if you come at them with any kind of hype or they're just like, I don't believe you, son. I don't
Yep.
believe a word you're saying, That sort of deal. And also to your point is that when they do find things to industrialize agriculture, then they dig into that because it's just serving their clients better. They're having better outcomes with they're just amazing people all the way around, I've learned a lot from the farmers and the people in ag that I've gotten to hang out with. So
Yeah.
great place, great people to hang out with. So just for context of everybody watching, uh, when you hear it on the outset, you think, oh, Rena and Jason kind of do the same thing. Yes and no, but and here's where we found this magical alliance is that if you think about it, and a lot of people have seen my example of the mountain. I talk about the climb up the mountain, that it is a climb, and that there's different waypoints in your development on your way to an exit. Right? We start
Cor-
out with the premise: everybody exits how matters. And so once you get that in your head, it's a perspective shift. Right? It's just a perspective. Go, oh, you know what? Yes, I am going to exit. And there's going to be 3 ways I'm going to exit. One is going to be an involuntary exit where, death, divorce, breakups of partnerships, those kind of things, or just flat out, I run out of money and I go out of business. Right. That's an involuntary exit. And show is set up to eliminate or to help people avoid that instance because it's very painful. I had
Mhm.
3 of those of my own, incredibly hard to come back from. And then there's the next one, which I know you've seen a few of, which is the dictated exit, which is where the buyer holds all the cards. And there's only really 3 cards when you're dealing with this. It's price, timing, and terms. And so the buyer just basically bullies you around and you have to take it and you're going to end up carrying a lot of that debt, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's a third one, which I learned in myself. I had a dictated exit, learned a lot from it. And then I started to say, wait, there's a better way to do this. And I started speaking to the buyers of the businesses. I made them my friends. Now I've got 250 relationships with private equity firms. I've got, hundreds with family offices. And I know exactly while we're on the way up the journey with one of our clients, I already know kind of who's going to buy it. And we're going to have 2 or 3 people at the table instead of just one who's got all the cards on their side, right? And so where you and I just it was immediate connection through a very very trusted source. And our first conversation, I was like, oh, this is a match made in heaven, because what you're good at, like if we think about going up the mountain, we say everybody that's on their way up the mountain, they're not really a built to exit client yet. They can learn from the show, they can learn about the right things to get to base camp. But it's that right before you go to base camp, you're going to need somebody to prep you up. You're going to need somebody. I love it. The way that we talked about it at the beginning, before we started recording, was you're like, I take them shopping. Right. Talk a little bit about that, about the shopping and the preparation before they actually begin that hard journey up that mountain.
Yeah. So, I love your base camp and beyond, but, anybody who's ever known anyone that has gone on a significant climb, and we'll just use Everest because, there's so many people that are like, "We're gonna go and we're gonna summit and it's gonna be awesome." And then they get to base camp, and I know lots that is all the further they went. Why? Because they assumed it was gonna be super easy when they turned it over to the Sherpas and all they had to do was walk.
Right.
But what they didn't do is they didn't have the right equipment, they didn't do the right training, they didn't do the right nutrition, they didn't have capacity to go beyond that. So, when we talk about where you take them at base camp, I really look at my point is everything before that.
Yeah.
So, what is the preparation we are doing? So, aligning our mindset about transition, getting ready to go into that process as an owner, getting that team that is going to support the transition and probably go beyond that transition, get them ready. We've got to make sure the business is healthy, systems in place, processes in place, all those things that are going to support that climb. And so I really feel like that is it's such a great partnership for me to be able to prep that client and get it ready. And whether that is a transition to a next generation or whether it's a handoff to you and your team to be able to bring that right buyer to the table so that we've got a smooth and easy climb to the top. I think that's a great partnership to have. But I feel like my role is just like if I can get you to base camp, awesome. We did our work. We were prepared and we're ready.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, it's a great alliance. So, in terms of business owners, I've come to this conclusion, and I want to get some feedback from you in your experience. And I know some people will pop to your mind when I say this, but there's really four when you're going to get hammered at the closing table, right? By the buyer. The buyer counts on four very distinct characteristics being present in the seller of the business. And here they are: arrogance, ignorance, impatience, and wrong team, right? Arrogance. And by the way, like, this is not a slam. This is where everybody, you included, right? That's where we have to start. Arrogance, because who the hell is going to start a business in an environment where, when you look at the statistics, 95% of them fail, right? So you got to have a little arrogance. You got to be a little ignorant about the process. You have to have some impatience because you have to build up customers, and you have to say, I don't, you guys can talk about that. This is not theory for me. I've got a family to feed. I got to do what I got to do. And then you put around you the first people that believe in your mission, right? The closest one. You grab your wife, you grab your husband, you grab your cousin, you grab your best friend from high school, you grab somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody that's a bookkeeper, right? And that's the team you put around yourself. And then you start to gather your attorney, you start to gather, your professionals, and all these people are people that you hang out at the bar with, or somebody that you have Sunday breakfast with or go to church with. So that's how the wrong team develops, right? It gets you to through that initial thing. But once you start to turn that corner, and to use our mountain analogy, it's 17,000 feet from Nepal to base camp. That is not a nothing climb. That's a difficult climb. You got to have some arrogant, some delulu, as the kids say, right? You got to be delusional at a certain level. And so talk to me a little bit about where you find people and how you switch them over, because building a business becomes an intellectual sport at some point, and selling is 100% intellectual strategy and capability, right? So
Yeah.
you got to make that turn to get the right team and to get on the opposite side of arrogance, ignorance, and impatience. So talk to me a little bit about what you've seen and how you
Yeah.
transition people through that.
Yeah, if I could say anything to business owners as they get started is right from the beginning, separate your emotions from your decision making. Just get that separate right away because like to your example, we start businesses with passion and enthusiasm and it's coming out of a need for something, right? We either want to start, solve a problem, we're escaping a situation, or we think we've got the next great idea, right? So it always starts with a ton of emotion. And to your point, we're usually starting businesses with a lot of emotion and energy, maybe not a lot of money. And so we're
Yes.
trying to get people that'll do things for us. And, we think, oh, we're going to save them along with saving ourselves. And so the whole thing starts off of massive amount of emotion for a lot of business owners. The challenge is that as we go along, we never switch. So all of our decisions are usually being made, well, that's my I that's my wife, that's my brother, that's my uncle, that I can't get rid of them. I can't hurt them. I can't make them disappointed. And so we start to build the company around the dysfunction. Eh, The companies that get built around dysfunction, when we get to that point where that that founding owner or the owner that put all of that dysfunction together is trying to separate, the thing collapses, right? The relationships collapse, the company falters, the customers get disillusioned. A lot of employees are like, well, if he or she is not going to be here, neither am I. And so your best key employees retire when you do. And all of that creates a really horrible situation for a seller, because any good savvy buyer is going to see all of that and they're going to start kicking down the price. And so if I could get any business owner, if there was one message, it's like separate the emotion from the decisions you need to make and start having conversations that get people aligned in the right place. And so you start making decisions that get everybody to the finish line a lot happier and with a lot more money in their pocket.
Yeah, there's a couple of really helpful things I learned along the way because I'm a I know you're a passionate person too, right? It's kind of in our blood. And so having that conversation with a mentor one time, it came down to that when emotions are high, intellect is low, right? And that was such a game changer for me because I'm like, that's so true. The more I'm up here, like everything is possible. I don't do what you brought up earlier, which is the most important thing is due diligence, right? I didn't do my due diligence on things. And that's where I lost the greatest amount of money, the greatest amount. I made the dumbest mistakes. I lost credibility in some of the stuff I was because it was so high, right? If you switch that, intellect is high, emotions are low. They're completely inverse, and the
Right.
outcomes that you get from that are proportionate to which one is highest, right? And so somebody said it before that brought to mind what you just said. It was you can't scale dysfunction. Somebody said it. I didn't say it, but I heard it, and I was like, "That is people try,
They
right?
do.
They really really try."
You see those business owners, they are just wrung out, right? And it's because they are carrying gorillas, right? They are just carrying and pushing so hard and still being successful, right? You're still seeing that company improve, improve, improve. And yet the minute that they get too tired or they, falter in any way, everything starts to go sideways. And so it is sustainable for a while until the person that's doing all the pushing and all the encouraging and all of the, just infinite belief steps back even half a step. It's no longer sustainable.
Yeah. And I think because again, if you're going on emotions, yes, you start out with a lot of passion, but there's also a very powerful emotion. And it's like one day to the next, the owner of that business becomes disillusioned, right? And that disillusionment causes a whole other set of emotions, which is disappointment and anger and frustration. And you start hearing things like, I can't hire anybody because everybody sucks. And, the economy is stupid. And just on and on and on because they're not making an intellectual connection. They're making an emotional connection incorrectly, by the way. I can't tell you the amount of people, and maybe you've seen this too, the amount of people that have come to me and go, Jason, just take my business. You don't even have to pay me for it. Just take it. You because it's like reminds me of that old joke. Take my wife, please. You know? And sometimes I sit back and I'm like, I'm very tempted because I know exactly what to do with their business, right? And they built a lot of value, but there comes that point, and usually when they do that, they just straight up walk. I'm dealing with one of those right now, where the person just literally walked away and said, I can't do that anymore, and went over and started this other thing. And we're talking a multi-million dollar successful business that just has been nosediving, right? And so that emotion turns to disillusionment. And so the best thing, and I want you to talk a little bit about, because I know you do this with your clients, um, separating the emotion is one thing, but recategorizing what you're building is another. And I like to look at it, best way I've had it explained to me was, you're building a machine that creates cash. And so I am not my business. My business is not me. I'm building a machine that creates cash. Now I'm passionate about my people. I'm passionate about puppies. I'm passionate about all of the other stuff I can be passionate about. But why would you ever love something that doesn't love you back? And therefore, I'm building a machine that creates cash. And with the money, I could do all of those things that I'm passionate about. But it's an after effect, not a during effect. So tell me, and you can anonymize these obviously, but tell me a time where you were dealing with somebody that was so emotionally connected to the business that they couldn't make that distinction, and it kind of went poorly. And also on the other side, somebody that goes, "Oh, I got to look at this like a machine," and then they turned it into an asset that was able to be transferred.
Yeah, and I think that this is it's so easy to get these stories in my world because in agriculture, being a farmer is not a career, it's an identity.
Yes.
And so for most of the clients that I get introduced to, one of the big uncouplings that is trying to happen to make a transition possible is I've got to uncouple myself from the identity that I've had for my entire career. And maybe since I was too little to even have a career, right? When I was 4, I maybe was going to be a farmer. And so
Yeah.
when you're not a farmer anymore, what are you? So I've got a great example of a family that we saw the power of uncoupling from your business and what can happen thereafter. But we had a business that happened to be a farm, but it also had a value stream business that ran alongside that. Four brothers, amazing farmers. They identified as farmers. They were farmers. Everything about them was farmer. And the 3 older brothers transitioned at about the same time, and the youngest brother stayed in and was part of that transition and was the stabilizing factor. And when we started looking at that transition, all of those brothers said, "Well, I'm gonna go onto the board of directors, and we're gonna sit over here and be the board." And the younger brother was like, "Well, now wait a minute. Um, we are where we're at because we're tapped. Like, we as a team have gone as far as we can go. We we can't everything we could have done, we've done. There's no more doing. We're done. So you 3 need to go be retired, and we need to bring in the next group, and we need to take this business, and we really need to let this business flourish." There was a lot of discussion. That took a few months to get the buy-in around that, but those 3 brothers s saw the wisdom, let their egos step back. They all said, "Fine, we'll put a board together." They brought in this brilliant board. I mean, one of the best boards we've ever put together in terms of like sort of business insights and forward thinking and innovation and all the things. And they came to the table, supported that brother who said, "We've always thought of ourselves as a farm that had this business. I want to be a business that just happens to have a farm." And you now look 18 months post that transaction and the absolute revolution that has happened in that business. It is shocking to see the expansion of business on that value stream that post that transition, it was as big as it was ever gonna get. They couldn't sell more, they couldn't do more, they couldn't produce more. We just put, an expansion on that business that will increase the capacity by 10 times because they've got so much pent up demand for their product that it is just ready to go. And that was all within 18 months. It's completely revolutionary. We've got new executives in place. We've got new customers. We've got a whole new world that's happening. And and the last time I was on the farm, all the farmers were joking, "Well, I guess we're businessmen that now own a farm." So, it's amazing, right, when you can just allow the energy that is coming from the people that stand behind you to propel you. It is amazing what ends up happening. But that business, just in a few months, and when we're now looking at the buyout of this next brother, I mean, we're looking at a multiple buyout for him compared to what his 3 brothers were able to achieve. So
Yeah.
it's remarkable, I think, when you get the right people around you who can help support you, give you a bigger vision, um, give you encouragement when you're feeling stuck or when you're feeling frustrated. It is truly amazing what can happen when you channel energy and allow people to propel you toward a goal.
Yeah, and that's a household name. I can't wait till you can talk about it publicly. I know exactly which, what you're talking about. It is the trans, and again, you led that. Like, that was one of the things that I immediately admired about you because that's a tough one.
Yeah,
Family and farming and going to business and then all of the pressure that's out there in the marketplace on farmers. Every great empire, I say this a lot because it's kind of my end game is to build a protection around small and mid-sized business owners, of which farmers are, right? And so that they get some representation, which doesn't exist out there. There's not as much support as you think. There's not as much help as you think. There's a whole bunch of things that are fighting against you. There's corrupt politicians. There's the an improper tax code. There's all of the plus AI on the way, and there's just so much. And that's again, like, I think one of the things that I fell in love with you immediately about is that you're a warrior for your clients. And
so
and the takeaway that I get from that segment from you that I think could help every single person watching this show is that everything that you want for your end game, right? And people got to think about that. Why am I building this business? Is it to be this stressed out and die at your desk? Probably not. That's not, but that's what'll happen unless you get that bigger outcome, that bigger vision of what you want to do with your life. Whatever God put on your heart for you to accomplish, He's also giving you the tools. But the first tool that she just illuminated for you in that last segment was this idea. Everything that you want is on the other side of everything you already know, right? Because that brother had to ask better questions. That brother had to lead sort of that back pressure of family and farm and history and generational and all that kind of stuff to say nope, what's going on in the future. So that's a really beautiful thing for somebody to take away. Everything that you want is on the other side of everything else that you think you already know.
yeah, yeah, that person, it's wonderful too, and, every business has that person that is a person that is in the wings, having observed what you're doing and is standing in the gap between you and employees and customers and has a different perspective, and probably isn't carrying all the stress that you're carrying. And
Right.
so, really, again, I just think it's so important to really tap into the talent around you. And that means sometimes it's leaning on professionals or consultants. Sometimes it is just trusting that the people that work close to you are not there to hurt you. They're actually trying to help you, even if they're encouraging a transition because they want what comes next for you. And that is not running you out. That is trying to propel you to the next great thing. And there's a way to do that, and I talk about, people that are in businesses with owners at that level, and, like, the way you approach that person is so critical to the success of that person that they feel pushed or disrespected or just not valuable anymore, you're gonna get a really different outcome than if you're encouraging that person to really step up into the next great thing. It's a totally different experience for that transitioning owner depending on how you're approaching it as a key person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. We built something, and you and I talked about this before. We built something almost as an afterthought in our process, which was called Horizon. Right? It's like you've got base camp, and then you go to build, and then you go to proof, and then you, before you hand it over to the brokerage or your sale team, right? There was this thing that we had to insert, and it's about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how quickly somebody wants to go through it. But it's called the Horizon because there's this place on Mount Everest, and I didn't know this. I was talking to Sean Swarmer, who climbed Everest before and is going to climb it next year. Challenged me to do it, so I'm probably going to have to because he's going to do it barefoot and with one lung, right? Barefoot and with one lung. And so, so, but he said there's this place on the mountain that people get to, and they're like, okay, they've made it from base camp to this particular, I think it's camp 3, maybe, where you get to it and it's a false summit. And there's still another camp and then the summit that you have to go, and people get there and they're all pumped up and they look up, and it's like they're almost further away than when they started. He said there's a particular place on the mountain, and he said that's where people either die or turn around and go home. And it's the same thing in the journey of somebody that's selling their business. We take them through Horizon because we got to say, what are you doing next? Right?
Yes.
What are your taxes in place? How the use of the money? Because you know this as well as I do, that a lot of people that have that first like home run and actually sell their company, they lose that money within 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
No
because
planning.
they think they're geniuses, and they like, I'm a day trader. No, I watched a guy burn. Well, I didn't watch him do it, but he came to one of my events and said, I sold for $20 million and I have $1 million left. Help. And so,
Wow.
and that took him 3 years, right? Took him 3 years, and we were able to turn it around and do a lot of stuff. But it's just so interesting that there's such an emotional component and surrounding yourself with professionals. Talk a little bit about surrounding yourself with professionals and why people should do that. Both sides, wrong team professionals, right team professionals, and what's the difference?
Yeah, so I wanna talk about the right team first because I think that that is something that there's still sort of this idea is that, like, if you've got a designation behind your name that you will automatically know what to do. And I think that for a lot of people, they're generalists, right? There's a lot of work out there in certain professionals, in certain professions. They really can just kind of take it as it comes. They don't have the need to really dig in and become a master of something because there really isn't a need to. You can make plenty of money doing fairly repetitive, somewhat uncomplicated things.
Mm,
Wonderful. The challenge is when we're talking about any kind of a transition of a business is that is not a general thing. People are not doing every day repetitively. And
mm,
every business has got so much nuance to it that even if you said, I specialize in agriculture. You would think after 10 years that I could say, yeah, there's a formula, and if you just follow this checklist, you got it. You don't even need to hire anybody. And that is not true. There is nuances to every transaction that you need specialists. You need people that are got a whole bunch of resources at their fingertips, but they are also excellent listeners and have a huge degree of curiosity about you, your situation, and your goals. And if you do
amen.
not find someone that's got the arsenal of experience combined with almost, you know, they're it's not quenchable, right? Their curiosity and their interest in you and what you're doing and what you wanna do next. You've gotta find people that wanna have that discussion. And when you find a team, so whether it's your lawyer, your CPA, your business broker, your business consultant, your coach, your whoever, right? Whatever that transaction needs around it, if you got a whole team of people that are highly aligned around being excellent at their craft, but also high degree of curiosity, value alignment, right? Values are completely understated a lot of times, but you got to find people that align. You are going to have not only a much smoother go, but you're going to have a very profitable go when you get
Yeah.
those people around you. Now, if you look at the flip side, you just go completely to the opposite, right? You go about misalignment, not excellent. They may say they do it, but they don't have a track record of success or they've done it a couple of times. They're not out there networking, building teams of people that are also specialists. And so when there is a need, they don't have a resource to bring. And when you as a business owner then have to go find a resource because that unqualified professional told you to, my goodness, I talk about like being the ping pong, right? It's like a business owner will come, I have a conversation, then that person pings me over to find somebody else, and then that person pings me back to go talk to the original person. And pretty soon, I am pinging around so much in areas and language I don't understand. I'm just going to go right back to my business where I am a master of what I do. And I'm just going to drop that conversation for now. And I've had many, many times I walk into businesses where they've had multiple runs at this and stopped or derailed because their team wasn't right. And so that spending time in building a team is so important. And this again is where we got to set emotion aside because every single business owner has got long-standing relationships with generalists. They may not be the person that can help you with this set of decisions and this series of transactions. And I oftentimes coach people that have had that experience or they've got that dear friend who is their attorney and oh my gosh, this isn't the right person, but how can I have that conversation? I'm like, if they're the right person, they're going to let us bolt on a professional for that short period of time. And then we will unbolt ourselves from it once we get you through this very, very specialized transaction.
Yes.
And the right people will always allow that. The wrong ones will try to control the client and will reject that. And instead of coming in with curiosity and learning, they prevent that business owner because of that relationship from getting the help and the services they need to really walk away from that table feeling great about the next evolution for their business.
Yeah. They
Really.
use they incorrectly use the relationship to poison the well for the
Yes.
business because they're deathly afraid that they're not gonna get their cut,
Yep.
and you people trust, business owners, when we trust, we almost trust completely because we don't have time to reevaluate relationships all the time. It's not in our capacity. So we don't have time. And so when you get to the end of it, if anybody, business owners watching this, and you're starting to go through this transition and you're getting pushback from any of the professionals around you, red flag,
Red
red
flag.
flag. Just go do some due diligence and interview 3 other people in that space that are specific to what your outcome is. Right. You and I share a coach, right? That's who actually introduced us. And and I think about Pascal, shout out to Pascal. Um, at my level, at your level, the coaching, the people that can coach me has shrunk, they have just the amount of people that can teach me, and very specifically where we want to go. But we share that coach, and that's how our relationship began, because I know his experience, I know his depth of wisdom, I know his, and I trust his opinion. But it's over a long standing period of watching him be competent, right? And him be able to accomplish the things. And it was the same. So then when I met you, there was that automatic, okay, cool. But we both tested each other. What do you know? right? We're just testing. What do you know? What do you know? We could be great friends, but are we going to be colleagues? And that took due diligence. That took time. That took, having those hard conversations to say, what do you know? Like how long have you been doing this? There's this one of the fastest growing industries because of this fact. 6 million businesses are going to change hands over the next 10 years. Okay. I think 3 million of them are going to disappear, just poof, because there's no help, there's no forethought, there's no foresight. You have people that are not adopting AI quickly enough and in the right way for their businesses to be able to compete in the new world. So I think 3 million of those are just going to disappear. So one of the fastest growing industries is called exit planners. And you want to talk about the biggest group of generalists. And I know there's some good exit planners out there. So please don't DM me and tell me that I'm talking, because even if you are a good one, you know exactly what I'm talking about. One of the best ones coming on my show in a couple of weeks that created an incredible piece of technology. And he and I feel the exact same way. But it comes down to, the idea, like when I look at Rena and I dig into her career and we have conversations, I know I'm dealing with an engineer. I know I'm dealing with an architect, right? And that's who you want to look for, somebody that now the architect or the engineer will tell you you need that plumber, right? You need that drywaller. But you're not going to go to the drywaller and say, "Hey, you know, what's the load on my roof? What am I going, how big should this be? Where am I going to put the pool? How am I, you know what I mean? All of those, you don't talk to that person about, they're necessary in the process. So you're either talking specialized or a generalist, and you've got to have somebody that is a specialist that can drive the conversation, that can put that blueprint right in front of you. So
Yes.
so powerful for you to point that out. I really love that. And then the other thing that popped into my mind, Keith Cunningham, who's the Real Rich Dad and the Rich Dad Poor Dad books, he always says, Jason, is a southern drawl. I'm probably not going to do it real well, but Jason, business is not a bathrobe. One size does not fit all. You know, he's got that simple wisdom.
Well, and while we're quoting Keith, let's not forget, let's not climb to the top of Mount Stupid and take a selfie. Yeah,
That's exactly right.
you
I
gotta
love that he
look.
named it. He named his book the road less. What is it? Taking the road less stupid.
Yes,
He's
yes.
just so direct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one thing I would love to just pop in on this whole thought of generalists. My sister is taking the certified exit planner program right now, and she sent me this text and she said, "Rena, here's like I forget how many hundreds of people on this call all paying X amount." And she'd figured out like they're and I was like, "Yes." And this is the thing. It's like when there is opportunity, everybody rushes to fill the space,
Yep.
which unfortunately makes it super, super confusing for the client, right? It's like now everybody's got a designation. Everybody appears to be credible. And so, what I would say, along with that is there is a cost associated with finding the best. There is also a cost when you hire the wrong person up front and have to hire and hire and hire because you're trying to avoid fees. And I have seen the cost of transition exponentially increase because we've got a fee sensitivity where we try to do the job with a person that is not qualified, but we trust that they maybe can at least limp us along. And so we waste a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we're probably going to be starting and stopping and starting over and stopping until we finally just decide now our timeline is short, our urgency is high, so now I just gotta go find the best person I can, but I've already paid so much for that transaction that it almost feels annoying, right? To have to
Yes.
go find yet one more person, which makes it super hard for that person that's really, really credible to get the job done quickly because that business owner is in disillusion and mistrust.
Yes.
So, I would say to business owners out there, the right people from the jump are going to again, save you time. It's ultimately gonna save you money, and that final transaction, right? The one that really, really matters is going to feel so much better and there's going to be so much more for you to do whatever you want when you hire the right people from the beginning.
Yeah.
Don't waste time with people that don't know. Go find the people that know and just let them take you there.
Yeah.
It's going to just be such a better experience.
Yeah, let me put some color, not some color. Let's put some numbers around what you just said.
Oh,
And I'll
100%.
just use I'll just use Biz Buy Sell last year, their own numbers. 75,000 businesses that were put on Biz Buy Sell, 7% of them sold. 7. And of that 7, half of those fell apart post close. Okay? That's that is a ridiculous if you've made it to be part of the 5% that has a business that survived and now you're going to go play that game again? You don't have to. I think what you and I are both saying, you don't have to play that game.
You
It's
know,
the same thing. What's that?
those statistics that you just quoted, those are worse than if you would just go and just start a business from scratch.
Right.
Those are terrible statistics.
Terrible, terrible statistics. And by the way, there's some huge gurus out there that have awesome funnels and suck people in and come out to my place for the weekend and we're going to teach you how to do M&A and we're going to teach you how to acquire businesses. We're going to that are so full of shit. And I don't care if I cussed on my own show, you know, that at the end of the day it's frustrating on one hand because I think when you're in this industry and you care, and the reason I care is because I got my tail handed to me over and over again. And I also figured it out and was able to free myself, my family, and been able to do wonderful things like rescue kids and work in domestic violence and feed people and, all of the things that come after it. And so I feel like because I hate bullies, I feel like people are getting bullied right now because of that big 10 million, business is going to transition. Everybody's like, "Oh, I got to get me a piece of that."
Yeah.
Right? The people you should work with are going to gut check you in the beginning. Right? This is some way. Obviously do your due diligence, right? Not somebody that told you, "Oh, I sold for 100 million, now I'm going to teach you how I did it." And then you find out that they were $2 million in debt after that transaction because all of it was screwed up and they didn't actually get paid anything. And now the way that they're going to try to make some money is selling you some BS, right? So, but what you can do or what after you do your due diligence and you're having conversations, if somebody doesn't push back on you, if somebody just is a yes man or woman in that, you've got the wrong people. Like it's rough. I mean, people either love me or hate me. I'm sure they feel the same way about you because there's a line that I crossed when I was younger and it cost me dearly in money, reputation, relationships. I will not cross that line for anyone. And you're not going to push me around, right? A lot of business owners, because they've been stuck in that position of authority for a long time, sometimes make the mistake that I work for them, right? To make the mistake that you work for them. Baby, you need me way more than I need you. So let's have an honest conversation, maybe for the first time since you started this business. And then you get challenged. And that's when it's like the wheat from the chaff or the boy from the boys and girls from the men and the women is to say, that's the coach I need is the one that's going to straight up let me know how it is and push me. And that's the coaches that changed my life. They're
Yeah.
the coaches like Pascal. We were just talking about him not being happy with us sometimes. He's
Oh,
not,
yeah.
yeah. And he's not afraid of me. Like, he should be, but he's not. He's, cause I hired him for an outcome. You hired him
Yeah.
for an outcome.
Yeah. He always tells me I only work with people I like. And I always wonder, are you subtly telling me that you're starting not to like me and I'm about ready to like get thrown off the island and that I'm like, okay, do you still like me? Oh, I get
Yeah.
you get me a little nervous. But I will tell you, I've had a client for multi years now. We worked a long time together before we were able to get his business transitioned, and now I'm helping him start a new business and get ready for the final quarter with a whole new set of things we're doing. But I one thing I really appreciate about him is he absolutely, no matter how hard the message and no matter how hard I gotta jerk him up because he is a visionary on steroids. He runs around and just creates chaos everywhere he goes because he is just that guy that gets excited about everything. And sometimes I just have to yank him hard and say, "Stop. You are destroying what you're trying to build." And one thing I've always appreciated about him is his willingness, even if he hates it, his willingness to stop and consider if there's any merit to what I say. And he doesn't necessarily always agree, and it doesn't necessarily always change the trajectory of what he's doing, but I always feel as though there's a genuine ability to pause, listen, assess, and then move.
Yeah.
And I tell you, he is probably one of the most challenging of people I've ever worked with in my entire career. But I also have seen him perhaps have some of the greatest successes of anyone in the small to medium business realm because of his ability to listen and to assess and not get overly egocentric.
It's a very I mean, look, I have acquired that, um, quality. I didn't have it, and by the way, I still fight against that nature, right? Which is I've been doing this for a long time. I know a lot of stuff now. Like I still fight I still fight against that nature, and humility is such a wonderful tool to have, right? It's the people that I enjoy the most. And again, the world that we live in, every single one of our clients thinks that they're far better than they are, me included, you know, because again, we still have some of that delulu,
Yep.
hanging around. But to be able to step back, consider, I love that word, to consider, remain curious, and to be able to alter your direction based on good feedback that can be measured. Right. That's kind of the takeaway on all of that. I love it.
I learned a really big lesson a few years ago is that, my dad still is a farmer. We still own a farm and, he's getting to the age where he came to one of my workshops and decided I need to do the succession plan, right? We're going to do the family meeting and we're going to start having conversations and I'm going to put my team together. So the first thing he did is, he pulled all of his children together and, had the big discussion about what he was doing and he's like, "Well, what are you kids thinking?" And we're like, "Well, dad, we don't care. Like, we want whatever is best for you. We want this to be, whatever you want it to be." And pretty soon we're all crying because, it's our dad and we love him. And it's just a hot mess. And my sister, who is very black and white, she just looks at me and she goes, "Isn't this what you do for a living? You're terrible at your job." Of course, that broke the tension. We laughed so hard. But one thing that I have thought about over and over and over since then is that we all have blind spots in our world of expertise. And there is a true value to having people that you can trust and appreciate and know that they've got the ability to see things and make an observation that has merit. It is not healthy to surround yourself with people that will create criticism because they like stasis and they want you to stay where you are. You need people that are genuinely trying to point out sort of those blind spots or those areas where you're not as shored up as you think you are to help make sure that these transactions and these businesses stay thriving. We we there was just a huge big report that came out about the collapse of agriculture, meaning that there are so many farms at risk right now of either being pulled out of agriculture completely or being absorbed by other farms. And the absorbed by other farms doesn't necessarily concern me too much, except for the fact that I think, well, fewer farms mean fewer farmers or fewer ag people, which I think really could impact our culture as a nation to have
Yeah.
less in that space. But what really concerned me about that whole report is the fact that so much of the resources of agriculture could be lost to other things. And there is only one reason why that is happening, and it is because there is no planning. And when we have plans and we know what we want our businesses to do and we know where that business needs to move and whose hands it needs to move to, we completely shut the door on the risk of those assets being converted to something that's not going to necessarily stay in line with what you value. And so I really feel like that need for coaches, the need for professionals that can speak respectfully but speak truthfully cannot be underplayed in this whole conversation about business transition and business sale.
It's a great place to wrap up the show. We've gone over time, which I kind of knew we would, but who cares?
Surprised it's not longer, Jason.
Yes, me too. Me too. And the only reason is I'm being a little disciplined today. so,
That's
but
awesome.
Yeah, great. It's always great talking to you. There's always something new I learn about you. I'm excited that we're partnered up. I'm grateful to Pascal for us being introduced. I adore you. I just think you're such a breath of fresh air in this business and in this industry that I just that's why I had you on the show. People need to hear from you, and they need to hear your perspective from somebody who is a consummate professional. So thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I will say as we wrap up, to the listeners out there, many of them are already going to be, attached to you, and I know that those business owners are in good hands. But for all of the business owners that are listening to this, like testing the waters,
Mhm.
I know that in our company, we take time to talk to people and have those initial conversations at no charge. Right? Call us and talk to us. Throw what you're thinking at us. Let us help guide you, help you with the next step. And I just want people to be aware that there's a lot of people that are very, very qualified, that that's part of their business model, and
Mhm.
that calling us doesn't mean you're committing to us. But again, we want to help business owners find the right resources. So
Yeah.
I really hope that people that are out there kicking tires will throw their foot, our way or your way, but just get some information before you just start signing contracts with people.
Yeah.
Get a little bit of information up front.
Yeah. And you're fully endorsed by me. So I highly suggest anybody that's in that tire kicking stage, you need to go shopping for your trip up the mountain. This
That's
is the
right.
woman you need to call. So
That's right.
what's your website? How do they find you?
Yeah, you can find us at transition point, B as in boy, A as in apple.com, or you can just renastriegel.com, and either one of those is going to get you to me. And again, just if you are confused and are not sure, find somebody you can just talk to for a few minutes. Get your thoughts collected. Let's get you on the right path, and let's just make sure that you got the resources you need to start the climb.
Love it. Love it. You get her, you get me, you get me, you get her. So that's kind of how this whole thing works. And appreciate you again. My team adores you. We're just really happy to be partnered up with you and to have you in our family now. So thanks for coming on. Appreciate